It's 3 p.m. in Nigeria and 10 a.m. in New York, where the police have now named a person of interest after a morning rush hour shooting at a subway station that left more than 220 people injured. The police say they were looking for 62-year-old Frank James in connection with the attack, as he had rented a U-Haul van that may be linked to the shooting. The key to the van rented in Philadelphia was found at the scene. We have details in this report.
The New York Police Department, NYPD, is asking anyone with information on his whereabouts to call a hotline. Mr. James has not been named as a suspect in the attacks just yet. Being identified as a person of interest means police believe he may have information concerning the crime. Reports suggest Mr. James, who has addresses in Wisconsin and Philadelphia, appears to have posted dozens of videos on social media in recent years in which he expresses bigoted views. More recently, he had also criticized New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Meanwhile, law enforcement and local leaders across the country have announced they are on high alert after the shooting on the New York City subway.
We increased our presence in our system, so every man and woman who's wearing a Bar Police uniform is out in the system this morning, and we'll continue to do that. This is in addition to what we do on a day-to-day basis. Our primary concern, obviously, is the safety of our riders and our employees, and today we just added a little extra emphasis in putting anybody that was in the uniform out into the system.
And this is not being investigated as an act of terrorism at this time.
Earlier, in a briefing late on Tuesday, police gave more details of the incident, which saw a male attacker detonate 2 smoke grenades and open fire at Brooklyn's 36th Street station. The attacks unfolded shortly before 8:30 local time on Tuesday, and police say the man had a Glock 9mm semi-automatic handgun. Images from the scene showed bloodied passengers lying on the floor of the smoke-filled station. Another 13 people suffered injuries related to smoke inhalation, falling down, or a panic attack, the police chief said. All of the victims are expected to survive. Investigators found the Glock handgun, 3 extended magazines, a hachette, and a range of potential incendiary devices at the scene.
And joining me now to discuss this developing story is Sam Fateh. He's a global affairs analyst. He joins me from Washington, D.C. Good to have you join us.
My pleasure.
So before we go to the broader issue, talk to us about what you know about where the police are now in this situation, and then what the operating theory is.
Well, the NYPD is leading this case, and they are still in search of the man. We don't know. At this time, they did not say if they suspect if he's still in New York or if he had crossed state lines going into other neighboring states. And so they are still in search of him. They identified him as a person of interest. Of course, some news reports labeled him as a suspect. But the NYPD right now that is taking the lead have not said where they think he is. They are still in search of him. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody knows if he's getting some kind of support. We are talking about a man who has released several videos. I mean, talking of violence, criticizing Eric Adams, criticizing some of the policies, even criticizing the recent appointment of Ketanji Brown Jackson, who he said was married to a white man that angered him. And he did express in a marketing video that he had post-traumatic stress disorder, so which also means that he practically not mentally very stable. So he is considered armed and dangerous, and nobody knows where he is. But if he crossed state lines, then the FBI would take this over from the NYPD. But the manhunt is on.
And just to be clear, a person of interest is someone who has information concerning an incident, not necessarily the person responsible for it. I just wanted to make that clear for anyone who is wondering why he's been named a person of interest and not a suspect. But we also know that there were postings on YouTube connected to this person of interest where he mentioned New York. he mentioned homelessness, and he also mentioned New York Mayor Eric Adams. And we understand that security around the mayor has now been tightened. Is he in any immediate threat? Is he under any immediate threat?
I mean, it will be considered to be a threat, especially when somebody carries out an attack like this and nobody knows where he is. You don't know who his next target is. So you would think that the people that this individual has been criticizing might be the next target. Even if you don't know who this individual, like who they are targeting, they are key individuals within cities. When something occurs within a city or even a country, there are people that you know at the end of the day, looking at the nature of the crime and from an analysis perspective, what the intent of that crime is supposed to be, you need to protect. So with or without that, the security around the mayor and certain key people in the city is going to get beefed up. One. Now, what is very essential here and what is very confusing about this, like you said, it's good that you try to clarify to people what a suspect and a person of interest is. Because also, as soon as the incident happened, some of the first description that was released by authorities said they were looking for a man who was 5'5", weighs about 180 pounds, and has orange shirt on. Of course, he had a gas mask on as well. So this person went into the subway with all intent to commit violence and to carry out a serious act of violence. Now, whether this is described as terrorism or not depends on when they apprehend the suspect, what his state of mind is and what his affiliations are. And so again, it is ideal and it is wise and it's a good call to beef up security around the mayor, because homelessness in the subway has been a very difficult conversation in New York for a very long time. New York is loaded with homeless people. New York, I mean, the rent is high. The mayor did take certain initiatives and policy reforms in order to address these things, which many people also feel are not adequate. I mean, so there are some people that are not happy with these decisions, but the mayor says his goal is to get people out of the subway and probably help them to get into the shelters. Now, we do not know to what extent and what kind of resources are available for Mayor Eric Adams to achieve, but he has been criticized for this by some of the people in the homeless community, and this may have angered some people, but the mayor is trying to keep the city clean and reverse the bad reputation that it has.
And talking about the mayor, he released a statement. I know that he's working from home, I think because of COVID-19, but he released a video message, I think that is, where he said, this rage, this violence, these guns, these relentless shootings are an American problem. That's according to Mayor Eric Adams. And then he called for changes to the gun laws in America. We also know that the background information to the person of interest, Frank James, did reveal that he has lived in 2 states in America, one of them Wisconsin. In both states, he had a criminal record, and then he also made really disturbing terrorist statements, not the kind of serious terrorist statement, but emotionally disturbing terrorist comments. Does America have a gun problem or a mental health problem?
Look, we have a mental health problem and we have a gun problem. These two you cannot separate, okay? Yes, America has these problems. But one thing I want to say is the gun culture, the gun is part of the American culture, and it's going to be very, very difficult to control. It's going to be very, very difficult to manage, and it's going to be very, very difficult to change. It is embedded in this Constitution in the Second Amendment rights. And so you have people that are supporting the Second Amendment rights that are powerful, they have the resources, they have the money to make sure that people that are sent to Congress in Washington, they are supported by them, and they make sure that they make it very difficult for any serious reforms to happen in terms of, the Second Amendment. I mean, I know President Joe Biden in his first term already has been trying to change some of these things. The Obama administration, so many other administrations had before and they failed, okay? But you have the Obama administration and all this pass certain executive orders in terms of background checks. I mean, in terms, states also have their own rules and their own laws. And sometimes these states, the feds cannot be everywhere. So sometimes the state authorities will refuse to enforce certain kind of laws. You can take them to the Supreme Court all you want, but they're not going to enforce it. So, and then you have certain states, borderline, what we call mess up the red states, where you can go into a pawn shop and buy a gun, where you can go into, like a sort of flea market and pretty much buy a gun. They have gun shows. So we do have a problem, okay? But what the Biden administration right now is trying to do is to say, look, we need to have background checks, regardless of where you are buying these guns from. We need to find a way to get rid of these semi-automatic rifles. They have caused so much damage from Sandy Hook, from the shooting that happened in Las Vegas. They are using the semi-automatic rifles. They are accessible. They're everywhere. It's like, how do I describe this for an African audience? It's like going to the store and buying chewing gum, right? That's how easy it is to go and buy a gun. I can pretty much walk into a store and buy one. So there is a gun problem. It needs to get resolved, but we need Congress to act on it. The president.
And I guess that's where the problem is, having that bipartisan resolution and legislation on this problem. But it is, like Eric Adams said, it is an American problem, and America actually needs to fix it. Thank you so much for talking to us. Global Affairs Analyst Sam Fateh.
My pleasure.